Oh, and the commissioner has just arrived. Perfect timing. So we're going to ask John Bard to introduce our commissioner.
Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. Here with us today, we have Commissioner Tony Guerrera, who is the commissioner of the DMV. He was first appointed, I think, when the governor was first elected, right? If I remember, yeah. Deputy, yeah, he was first deputy and then moved up to full-time. He served in the state senate and state legislature for many years, and I know thanks to Nick's leadership, we were able to engage in a good conversation with both him and Mary, who's part of the DMV staff as well. So they're here to hopefully have a good conversation with us, try to get some solutions, and try to move the issue forward regarding testing. So with that, I give the floor to you, Commissioner. Thank you.
Good morning. How is everyone? Good. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I will say that just a little bit of my background. I am the Commissioner of the Department of Motor Vehicles over the last 3 years. I was the Deputy Commissioner prior to that, and I had almost 20 years in the state legislature. One of the committees that I chaired was the Transportation Committee, which, as you know, oversees DMV and DOT in regards to our roadways and making our constituents as safe as possible. A little bit of background on myself. I have a brother. I also have a sister who's also deaf. All right, went to American School for the Deaf. I do sign, not as good as I should, but just a little bit of background. My parents came from Italy, and believe it or not, we learned how to sign basically in our own type of language sometimes. As Italians, we use our hands a lot, and it came in handy when talking to my sister, and and from there we learned the alphabets. But she had a fantastic education at ASD. She is now, I shouldn't say her age, but she might get mad at me. She's almost 60 right now. She has a daughter. She lives in Newington, Connecticut, and I will say she is employed right now at ASD also. So again, if there's, I will take any comments or any concerns that you may have. I have Mary Santangelo, who's my division chief at the Department of Motor Vehicles, and I have Jim Politis, who also is our legislative liaison. And Mary oversees the branch offices when it comes to driving in regards to knowledge test and road test. So with that, I will take any questions. And it really is nice to be here.
Are there any questions from folks?
Hi, yes. I'm Mary Sue Owens, and I am an interpreter. I've been interpreting in Connecticut for many, many years, and I've had the pleasure of interpreting at many of the DMV locations for the written test. And of course, we don't do the road test. We don't want to be in the car, but we do the pre and post before they do the test. Anyway, my question is, it seems that, and like I said, I've been here for many years, we used to have an agreement that the test would be provided through the American Sign Language interpreter, and the questions would be brought in their language, which is American Sign Language. Has nothing to do with English. So we always felt that there was a level of success with that because the test was not supposed to be a reading test. It was supposed to be a test of the knowledge of the rules of the road. Unfortunately, over the last, it seems like a couple of years, would you agree with me, Nick? There seems to be some locations that are requiring them to do the test on the computer, which is fine. We've been able to do that. I guess there's a way they can suspend the time so that it doesn't time out on us, and that's worked out really well. But apparently there are some locations that are requiring that the deaf person only get the instructions in ASL, and then they have to do the test on the machine. That they don't provide it a paper format, and they don't turn off the timing, and they don't allow the interpreter to interpret the questions. So you're not testing their knowledge of the road, or the rules of the road, you're testing their ability to understand English. And we all know that that test is not a very, as far as grammatical English goes, it is a little bit challenging, even for hearing people who have a very good concept and use of the language. So my question is, what is the DMV's policy, and how can we make sure that deaf people are getting access to the test in their language? I'm assuming that there are other languages that have that are being presented, whether it be Spanish or I don't know what others you might have, but I'm assuming that they get to take their test in their native language.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank you for that question. Let me just say first and foremost, we at the DMV want to make sure that we can provide anybody that comes in to our offices an accommodation to get their driver license. We know that driver licenses are so important, not only to drive, but it's a form of ID. They need that to whether it's opening a bank account, whatever it may be. So we are trying to make it easier. And when I say easier, I just want to be clear that not easier that you could take an easy test and you're on our roadways, but easier in regards to how we administer those tests, to your point. So with that said, we have done multiple languages over the last few years. And you mentioned a couple, I believe a couple of branches that do it and some that don't do it, in, I believe, in the ASL language, correct? Do you know which branches that was at?
I don't do the test as much as I used to. I primarily would work in Wethersfield and
Okay.
Enfield. It's been a while since I've done it, but I do know that not too long ago they were looking for an interpreter, and I'm not sure which location it was.
Okay.
But they made it very clear when they requested the interpreter that the interpreter was only going to be allowed to interpret the instructions and not the test itself. And I said, I can't accept that. I can't do that. That's not part of what my job is. And at that point, I don't know what happened because I don't secure my own job. The agency provides the interpreter, so I don't know if somebody did go in and take care of that, or I don't know what happened.
Okay. No, and thank you for this information, because I have Mary with me here. Do you know of what the policy is for, because I believe our policy should be straight across for all branches. This is Mary Santangelo.
Hi. So I have checked with some of the offices, and to my knowledge, whoever the translator is going in should be able to interpret from the screen to the applicant. They shouldn't be doing anything different. The interpreter, because that's why we have a contract with you, is so that you can come in, it's certified, you can come in and work with these people to get them to where they need to go. The tests are not timed. They're only timed to the point that they select an answer, right? So once they select an answer, then it moves on to the next one. They can go back and forth and repeat as many times. So it's not a 5-minute timing or a 30-minute timing, it's whatever it is. And once they get so many wrong, then the test would stop.
Shuts off.
But all offices are supposed to be doing it the same. And this kind of enlightened me when we had a meeting with John last week, there may be some inconsistencies, so I am putting a more stringent policy together for them. And we're also trying to work on the ALS language to be put on the computers for them. I wasn't aware that that was ever something in the time that I've been in branch doing it. It's always just been the computer test. And it could have happened once they changed over from paper to computer. I don't know.
Right. I don't know, and I would certainly encourage our deaf members to also speak up about this. I don't know that necessarily a signed version of the test would always be accommodating for every deaf individual. As you see, we have several interpreters here, and our goal as interpreters is to match the language level of the person that we're working with, whereas if you were to provide the format in ASL, while that may be an accommodation for many deaf individuals, it may not be for all, especially for people who are coming here from another country, because their native language isn't even American Sign Language.
Correct.
Okay, and so as interpreters, that's when we bring in deaf interpreters, because they have that experience of working with individuals from other countries, and how to make sure that the language is being presented in a way that they would understand it. So I think an ASL version would be phenomenal if you could do a video version of that. I don't know how you would do the timing, but I'm sure that's something that you all could work
Well,
out.
I said, so it's really not a timing, it's a matter of when they've selected an answer.
Right.
So they would still have to choose A, B, or C. And once they choose, it would go to the next question.
Right, but would they be able to have the question repeated?
Yes.
Because, okay,
Yes,
that would be my
yes.
question, okay.
So if we had the ALL language there, do you still need an interpreter with them? Or would that be a separate request? Okay.
Two things. One, you would still need the ASL interpreter in person, because if they are interacting with the individuals at the DMV, they would need the interpreter for that. But also there are some deaf individuals for whom ASL is not a native language for them. They would still need an accommodation of another interpreter.
Okay, I appreciate that,
Great.
thank you.
But that's a minority.
Yeah, and I think though, Mary, and again, this is great because being here, you know, there's many ideas that you could provide to us too that can help implement a lot of these procedures. But I don't think this is a big push to do something like this, you know, through our IT department or whatever it may be.
Well,
The
it's-
ASL
they're
language.
working on it
Right.
now.
So it's something that we can do and to provide everybody a fair test so they can take it.
That'd be great. And not to add more work to Morrison, but she is our contact. She is the person here at the state who is head of the bureau. So she, I think, probably would be the best first contact for you to make as far as making sure that the video was accessible.
Okay. And what is her, I'm sorry, who would that be?
Morrison,
Okay,
over there.
excellent. Thank you.
Mrs. Morrison, I have a question. I have a question. I want to make sure that I'm understanding you correctly. So currently, as it stands, the tests are provided electronically on the computer, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
The
Okay.
yeah, the written test, yes.
So there's currently no ASL version of the test that's embedded in the written test as it stands, right?
Yes, there's no.
Right, so there's not, as it stands, you could see the question in English, but there's not that video of ASL.
No, there is
Okay.
not.
So that would be something worth considering. But my question was for Mary Sue, just to follow up on what you had said. Well, I understand the need for in-person interpreting in certain circumstances. I think while the DMV is in process of working out how to figure out how to embed the ASL into this written test, it might benefit having a certified deaf interpreter work with you on the test to make sure that the translation is accurate. I don't know if that was something we wanted to mention as well, because I think that would be really important.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. And that
Great.
was our thought process also, that when we do this, that we have somebody from an organization that knows this inside and out.
Okay, now my last question. Is there currently a form for requesting accommodations for those who are going in to take the test? And on that accommodation form, does it have any mention of anything to do with ASL?
No, I'm sorry. It's just a regular art form, and the applicant fills it out with their name and the information, the date and time that they need their test taken. We go to the American School of the Deaf and request the interpreter through that. So this way we have a time and we know the location.
Okay, just to make sure I am understanding you clearly, you do have a form for accommodations in general, or you don't?
We do have a form for the accommodations.
Okay, okay. Do you mind saying a bit about what accommodations are mentioned on that form?
It really does not specify anything other than the applicant is looking for an interpreter to take the knowledge test.
Okay, great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning. This is Melissa Dennis speaking. I'm in the mental health arena, and I've had the opportunities to work with clients all over the state. And some of the challenges that I experience with working with deaf clients who want to get their license, it's a little more than just getting an interpreter. It's the process of requesting the interpreter through the online process. Some of the clients do not have the ability to understand how to navigate the computer system, so I'm having to do that work with clients to set up the appointment, to look at the different options of the dates. I mean, that can be a little complex. Also, I find after we set up the appointment, we call the branch that we're going to go to, because as we all know, in this profession, we have to educate. And it's not really the responsibility of the deaf person to do that, or the interpreter, to be quite honest. The interpreter's role, they have a function, but there's no other person who's advocating, explaining what needs to be done for the test, because it's not fair for a deaf person who's nervous already to take the test maybe for the 5th time. I know for me personally, I failed the first time taking the test. This was a long time ago. Because the language was very complex, a lot of double negatives in the language, so I couldn't understand it. I did not use interpreters at that time. If I had, I probably would have passed. But I was not aware of accommodations that DMV could provide. Also, the other thing I've had experience, and I don't recall her name, and I'm not sure if she's still in DMV, very difficult to navigate your website. The ADA person contact for DMV is embedded at many layers in DMV, and when I called, helpful, great customer service, I'm not sure that that person understood. So it's really, I think, meeting with the deaf community and helping them understand how to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments, especially in regards to the online process. As you know, DMV just did a number of transactions online over the last 3 or 4 years. But you bring up some very valid points that maybe we should have a team look at this, with your team also, to see how we can navigate through the system that makes it very clear for individuals who are deaf, that they can go through the system in a way that is easily just as much as somebody like myself. In regards to the website, couldn't agree with you more. As the DMV keeps moving forward, we keep doing more and more of our updating of our website, and I think that's something that we will again work with this team to see what is it that we should be focusing on to make sure that whoever's looking at this has the capabilities and the understanding of what they're doing.
Hi, my name's Marielle Daniels. I'm actually from the Connecticut Hospital Association, so I troubleshoot a lot of stuff for the community on that level. But just one thing that comes to mind, so if an interpreter comes in and they do experience kind of not the situation they expect, who do they ask for at that location that should be the person that they can escalate and maybe still accomplish the test that day so that they don't have a totally wasted trip?
So Thank you. I would ask, and I will put this out there, all right, that if any test that you may be taking, all right, and if there's a situation that may occur, I would ask for the branch manager, all right, and to make sure that they bring it to the level of the division chief. And with that said, this is great, by the way. I have to say, so thank you for the invite here, because I'm learning quite a bit here too. And that is that I think when we leave here, my team will also meet with their managers, right, to discuss a lot of the situations that we just talked about, to make sure that they're aware of the surroundings and how we can make it a little bit easier and more accessible in the meantime until we can get to those crucial issues that we're talking about right now.
Hello and good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
I want to thank you and Mary for being here today. My name is Nick Dion. I work as a sign language interpreter here in Connecticut, as well as many of these other fine folks, and I am also the current president of the Connecticut Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf, and our work is intended to provide advocacy for our interpreting community, as well as our deaf, hard of hearing, and deafblind communities, as well as provide consultation on all of these various aspects. I'd like to go back on a few points and then add to one as well regarding testing. Mary Sue explained it perfectly, that we see these issues existing with barriers that I guess are a little bit more inconsistent. So to ask which branch or which DMV location, it's a little hard to answer, because I think the problem is it's inconsistent and it's not fully understood by all of the officers who are overseeing the tests. So it's hard to pinpoint one location. Sure. In addition to that, I also have interpreted these tests several times as well, and I'm finding that the conversion over to the computer systems have been a little bit of a challenge, in that a paper option is no longer available, and I'm wondering if it's possible to at least provide that option if it were to be a request. And the reason I ask is because several of the folks that I've interpreted for, whether I've had luck or not in advocating for making it accessible in ASL and using our services, since we're there the entire time and we might as well be utilized, have still not passed. However, when they have to review the results of their exam and they are given time to review them, and then depending on the officer, if I'm allowed to interpret the incorrect answers and then explaining why they were incorrect, to be able to give them that explanation, we've noticed that that amount of time eventually times out. And there's been several occasions where, let's say they've gotten six questions wrong until you fail the test. I might have gotten down to question 2 or 3 with the interpretation, and then the computer times out and it closes, and it becomes a unequitable experience for that person, because then they don't get the explanation as to what mistakes they've made. And that's part of the reason why having a paper option would be beneficial in one location before the statewide conversion happened to computers. I was given the option, or not me, excuse me, the testing candidate was given the option for a paper exam, and that gave us the opportunity to take the time necessary to allow the interpreting to happen without any kind of timing out or anything like that. So I guess my question is one question is there a way to eliminate the time for reviewing your results? And is there really a rationale behind that? And one other thing I wanted to bring to your attention also, after hearing this discussion about making the test accessible in ASL, I do see merit in doing that, but what I think may have even more of an impact, or maybe even worth more time investing, is the DMV manual and the resources needed to study up for this test, mostly because those are very cumbersome and very detail-oriented, and as several folks have mentioned, a lot of deaf and hard of hearing candidates who are taking the test do not use written English as their first language. So if it were worth our time to look into ways to interpret that into a video format, I think that would benefit test takers, because they may not even understand all of the information that's given in the training manuals, let alone going in and then understanding the questions, which that's a whole another layer worth looking into as well, as to how the questions are worded. Because some standard policy ways of wording the questions may not have reason behind it as to why questions are worded in such a way. Even as native English users, we may read the test and say, what does this mean? I'm not sure I understand the question, and go back. So I wonder if there's also ways to, this wouldn't solve the problem, but it would be an easy fix, is maybe looking at the actual written format of these tests and seeing which triggering words cause the confusion or cause the misunderstanding of folks, as well as, is there a way to say things in a more plain English way rather than kind of dense text or something that would be hard to understand but from anyone in this room? Just a couple of things to put out there.
No, thank you. First, I think there was a lot of great suggestions that you just pointed out. I think that one is when you talk about the paper option, that is something I think that maybe we can do, right? To make it, again, I don't want to say easier, because we're not trying to make a test easier for someone to get behind a robe, but we want to make it more convenient on how they understand the process. I also think, from listening to everything today, is that maybe to set up a working group, right, with some of the members here and some of the members from our team, whether it's the website, the driver services area, whatever it is, to really look at the test and to understand some of the barriers that maybe that people have, that we can do it in a better way. To your point, the terminology sometimes, right? Terminology can be confusing in regards to when they're taking it, and can it be made in a simpler format, but also understand that the answer is the answer, right? So I think that, you know, what we can take away from here is that maybe our group should come up with some type of work session to invite all of you, whoever you deem that would be part of that. And let's try to get to some of the barriers that you're seeing here and implement them in the future, so that way they have the accessibility that they need. Thank you.
My name is Louisa. Thank you. I would also like to add my own experience over the years. I have worked with my local representative in the town of Southington, and the whole deaf community has been experiencing frustration over the years. And it often, that we cannot take our power in order to advocate within the community without the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing people. There was a press conference 2 years ago here. Matt Ritter, Speaker of the House, mentioned during that press conference that it had been his mistake for not listening to the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing people in the state of Connecticut. After that, many things have become much, much better for us. And so I am recommending that you have a deaf person on your task force, whatever committee you might have. For example, during COVID, the government provided daily press conferences. So Barbara and I came to the governor's office in order to explain the picture-in-picture need for consistent interpreting. Sometimes they would use the cameras in ways that were not conducive to our being able to see fully the interpreters. And so having deaf eyes and deaf experience on that particular setup was necessary in order to make it accessible. Again, Director Morrison, who is deafblind themselves. And I think it's very important to listen to our community and to work in conjunction with us. So that's just what I wanted to say. Lisa Flaherty-Vaughn.
Hello, good morning. This is Lisa Juan Flaherty. I am a member and advocate of the community as well. Just to clarify, while providing the deaf testing or the road test, are you providing the training and needed resources during the training classes? Is that still happening? I've taken the driving tester classes a while back, but I'm not sure if that's still a requirement or has there been any updates to the policy to specifically regarding the preparatory classes towards preparing for the driver's test?
I think, if I'm understanding correctly, are you talking about the driving schools when they're going out there?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I do believe that the driving schools have all the updated materials that they need, that they should have to provide the proper qualifications for the individual to take a test. And if we're seeing something that isn't there, then we need to be alerted to that to make sure that we have that knowledge so we can have those conversations with the association.
Director Morrison. Yeah, a few questions have come to mind for me. It sounds like the community has asked for accommodations. And so that goes back to the accommodation form that I began to ask you about. I'm wondering if we need to revisit the accommodation request form in order to better support the community's needs. And then my other question is, I'm wondering about the knowledge test. As Nick had mentioned, the study materials and prep materials, the availability of that. I know that there are also people within the hearing community who have learning disabilities and reading is difficult. Perhaps you have a verbal or an auditory test where those questions are read out.
All set? Want me to answer that? Okay. I do believe, let me just go back here to what you were asking that you talked about. Again, if we talk about the verbal test or whatever it may be, I think that the working group can come up with some solutions in regards to the forms to make it more accessible and to make sure that there's a clear understanding what needs to be done in taking that test. Again, we want to make sure whoever gets behind the wheel understands the rules of the road and understands what they're getting behind a vehicle, that they are safe and they're providing safety not only for themselves but people out there. And I know that sometimes from what we're hearing is that, you know, the test can be difficult or confusing at times. And so I think having this working group to kind of like narrow down what the issues might be on the certain parts of the test might go a long way in regards to how we implement that in the future.
Barbara Casson speaking. Okay, we just have a few minutes. So, Kirsten?
Hi, this is Kirsten Kalia. I'm here as a person who is hard of hearing. I took my tests in another state several decades ago, a few decades ago, when my hearing was better, and I didn't have hearing aids though, and so that was a challenge for me to take the driving test. Pardon my ignorance, but we've been talking about the written portion, and I don't know if there are issues with the driving test itself. No, Mary Sue's shaking her head. And if there are any issues that we should address here about that while we're talking about this. Thank you.
I'd like to respond to that. Again, having been around for ages. There are certain locations who were more experienced than other locations because they were getting the bulk of the deaf students or the deaf individuals who were applying. A good example of that is Wethersfield.
Okay.
Many of the students, this is years ago, at the American School for the Deaf, they had actual teachers who were deaf who taught the students in ASL. Yes, they used the book, and yes, the book was, was their guideline to make sure that they were explaining the rules of the road and so on and so forth. They chose very often to use Wethersfield because the people there had become very accustomed to them. Now, that being said, the school no longer does that. From what I understand, it was a financial burden because it's not, who's going to pay for it? So a lot of the individuals now are required to go to their own community or whatever businesses that provide the driving schools that provide these services. And that is very inconsistent. We have seen that. That is very inconsistent. Some of them have no idea. They bring an interpreter in, and they don't even understand the importance of the timing that it takes to make sure that the information is being presented in a way that the deaf individual can understand it. Then it's incumbent on the individual to go to their local DMV to set up for the test. That's maybe the first deaf person that this DMV has ever encountered. So they have no idea. So it is very inconsistent. And I also know that the deaf individuals who in the past took those classes at ASD, you could ask them the question and they could tell you the answer. They didn't even need to know what the choices were because they had been trained in their own language and they understood the information so clearly. So all that being said, I think the importance here is when you talk about setting up some sort of a task force, that would be fantastic.
Awesome.
And I would like to suggest, again, it's easy to volunteer someone else, but because we had some wonderful teachers at the American School for the Deaf who knew the rules inside and out, knew the book inside and out, and had that experience, I would like to see if maybe we could find one or two of them to be on that task force because they are the ones who actually experienced it.
I will give you my commitment that I will work extremely hard, all right, with this group or any group, all right, to make sure that we try to make it as comfortable as possible for people taking a written or driving test when it comes to the Department of Motor Vehicles, Mary. And I think the working group task force is imperative. I really do. Because there are going to be many issues that that group will know that I won't know. All right? And it's important that we understand it from A to Z. So therefore, whatever we implement works for everyone. Works for the safety of the people of the state of Connecticut, but also gives the license to an individual that deserves to have a license and to make sure that they're not confused because of terminology, whatever it may be. And if that means we have to put that ASL language in place, then so be it. All right? And maybe even in the future working with certain driving schools, right, that are out there that have quite a few throughout the state of Connecticut that might be even part of this task force, that maybe they would love to be part of it to understand and how to help individuals get their licensing.
This is Barbara Casson. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, so I'm going to stay the conversation here. I very much appreciate your time and visiting with us, and we look forward to working along with you, your team at the DMV, and I'm sure that Director Morrison will be happy to make an appointment. So thank you, both of you, for coming today.
And thank you, and to this group, and to Mr. Morrison there, Director Morrison, whatever it is, I don't know what his title is there, but please, if there's any issues, give me a call, all right? I am 24/7, all right? And I will try to do whatever I can and to let us know where you're finding some issues and what branches it may be, because we want to rectify that ASAP. But to get this task force up and running will make everybody's life easier in regards to how we go about this. So thank you.
Thank you.